Hello and welcome to The Best Of. I'm your host, Ricky Tucker. The Best Of focuses on the best in the areas of business, sports, entertainment, and our community. If you know of anyone you'd like to recommend for us to spotlight going forward, please email us. And if you would email their name and the category, whether it's business, sports, entertainment, or the community, if you'll send that to rixinternational@msn.com or go on Facebook at Ricky Tucker on Facebook and join our Best Of group. We'd be more than happy to see you there. And finally, you can feel free to give us a call at 901-870-7492 for recommendations to spotlight people that you know that you feel really good about to be spotlighted on the Best Of. Speaking of spotlight and speaking of the Best Of, we're starting this week with a focus on community. And we have none other than Mr. David Muskin, who's responsible for a Men's to Boys program. It's a men's program. Mr. Muskin, how are you today?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for having me, Ricky.
Thank you so much for joining us on our first show. We're really excited about the new show, and we're excited about you being a guest. If you would tell the listening audience some things about Mr. Muskin.
Well, I'm a little country boy from a little delta town called Rouville, Mississippi. And I've been in Memphis now for 30 years. And the greatest thing that ever happened to me other than being born and finding Christ was I met my wife here, Jacqueline Muskin. And we've been happily married for 21 years. And I have a 13-year-old son, Malcolm Ali, and he's a middle school student, and Kelsey Nicole is a freshman at Middle Tennessee State. And I guess my passion would be, I really believe in men being involved with their family, their church, and their community, and taking care of our old people.
Awesome. Just in that few minutes, I'm sure that the listening audience could see why we were fortunate enough to have you to join us today. As a matter of fact, you're a pretty smart guy. You got those good right at the onset, so that's great. Let's get right into it and talk about your program. I am really excited to find out more about it. How did the Men's to Boys program get started?
Well, it was, matter of fact, it started out of a tragedy. Our pastor, only son, was shot and killed while just sitting on the porch having a good time, and just drive-by, senseless violence. And instead of being vengeful, he turned it into a positive, where he wrote his doctoral thesis was based on some type of way to get boys to be more positive and curb this senseless violence and, black on black crime and youth against youth. Okay, you mentioned the pastor. Would you be willing to share with us the pastor's name? Oh yes, this pastor is Dr. L. Assemblyman Gray Jr., and he's a pastor of New Sardis Missionary Baptist Church, and I'm a deacon at that church. Awesome, that's good to hear. And we would say, Pastor Gray, we're really excited that you saw fit to turn tragedy into something positive for other young men and other families within our community. So you've told us why it got started. Tell us a little bit about Men's to Boys. Well, Men to Boys is we do men to boys instead of boys to men, because some people do boys to men, boys becoming men, but ours is men mentoring into boys as they become men. And it's a program where we divide it up in 3 different groups. It's 9 to 11-year-olds, 12 to 14-year-olds, and 15 to 18-year-olds. And we offer them life lessons and life skills. We teach them things like tying a necktie, which is simple, but a lot of kids don't know, and working on cars and how to be respectful to their parents and their peers. And we also offer African drumming, and the program is based on Christian principles and African principles. So we want them to get in touch with God and with their African roots. Okay, that's pretty interesting. That African roots, I guess that kind of gives a good, strong sense of self. Yes, is that right? Yes. Okay, then. And I love the respect piece, because that's something that we tend to be losing a little bit. And the life skills. What kinds of successes, or have you seen anything that you feel really good about as you've seen the program move forward? Yes, we've had, just tying the necktie alone, a lot of parents come to us and are amazed at how well their children are doing with the ties, and they won't allow their fathers to do it anymore. And I like to brag that they're better at it than their fathers. And we've had some men, or men now, but when they was boys, they came through and they had little attitude problems, and we was kind of annoyed at them a little bit, but then we stuck with them, and now some of them are going off into the military, some going off to college, and they just turn their life around for positive.
Wow, so there's some value obviously in that. It's quite interesting that you talk about the neckties, because as we see our society kind of going into somewhat of a relaxed state, we to wear neckties when we're going on job interviews. So it seems as though there are several working parts, but they're all working towards the development and improvement of that individual.
Correct.
Okay. There's got to be something. Obviously, you talked about Pastor Gray and this being born from his personal situation, but there's got to be something that drives you. What is it that drives you to be a part of this?
Well, it's community. I mean, it's because if you notice our community is changing, I guess maybe because our generation is a little different than the new generation, but it's tending to be changing. I think they don't have a real grasp of reality. A lot of the stuff they see on TV and they actually think is real. And so my passion is to get them to understand that what they see is not real, and they can be better than what they are. And then on a personal note, I have it's 4 boys in my family, and a couple of them has been involved in the criminal justice system, even though we were raised in the same values, but the peer pressure got to them. So I'm trying to give them something more than what the parents gave them, and maybe they can take what the parents give them, something that we give them, and help avoid that peer pressure that sends them down a negative path.
Well, I think you really touched on something there when you talked about the peer pressure. And I think it's really ingenious. Don't know whose idea it was, but first of all, it's gender specific. You're just working with boys. And secondly, you mentioned something about dividing them into the 3 groups.
Yes.
And what were those groups again?
It's 9 to 11, 12 to 14, and 15 and to 18, and we let them choose their own names. And one group consider themselves the children of God, one group consider themselves the Hoseas, and the other ones are the prophets.
Awesome. And that also allows them to share similar experiences within the group. So that's really great. What other types, now obviously this is in your church, what other types of groups or organizations do you see really benefiting from Men to Boys?
I think any program that, trying to reach the boys and trying to let them understand that regardless of where their circumstances are now, they can be better. They don't have to just stay where they are. And in fact, when we do our mentoring, it's a group mentoring, and we try to bring boys together that may have a 2-parent home where, pretty good income, with young folks that may have a single-parent home, but not doing as well. So the ones that are doing well can understand how blessed they truly are, and the ones that are not will understand that they have an opportunity to get to a better place.
Okay. Now, let's say I'm an adult. I'm a guy. I don't really know you, but I meet you someplace, and we're just kind of talking, and you talk to me about Men to Boys. Why would I really want to get involved, or what would motivate me to get involved?
Well, like I say, just love, and then the fact that Christ even told us, if more, when a lot is given to us, we should be able to give back.
Okay.
For much is given, much is But then not only that, but the whole thing in our community, men seem to drive what goes on in our community. If men would stick with what they know, and they can make the boys better. And in fact, I was reading a survey a while ago that they said in the late 60s, early 70s, almost 80% of black homes was headed by men.
Wow.
And now it's less than 40%, and you can see the results in our community. So if they want to, turn this thing around, they need to get involved, because these same young men that we mentor may be dating their daughters. Wow. Or marrying their daughters.
Yeah, that's a really good point. My wife and I are familiar with a gentleman whose daughters, he has 2 daughters, and he's really trying to train his daughters to really be self-sufficient. Of course, he knows that one day they're going to grow up, but you're preparing those boys for these young ladies that are one day going to grow up and be looking for husbands. So going back to the question about why a guy should get involved, I've had guys to say to me, how can I make a difference? How can one person make a difference? And it just sounds like through the Men's to Boys program, they could maybe contact you, and I know we're going to share your contact information a little bit later, but it sounds like, are you open to someone just coming in, maybe speaking to your boys from time to time?
Well, yeah, that's basically our whole focus. We want different men. I mean, like I was speaking to someone earlier, that it's nice to have people with PhDs and lawyers and doctors, but we want the common man, just the everyday customer service agent, or the guy that may be in janitorial work, to come in and let them know that even though you don't have to make a lot of money to be a good person.
Absolutely.
To be a good father, to be a good mentor, to be a good leader. So we want them to understand that, yes, we want to strive to be better, but you can be better. I mean, you can be your best right where you are.
Right. So this give all of the guys in the audience an opportunity to go and get a pen and a piece of paper, because we're going to be giving the phone number a little bit later. So we should have the phone ringing off to give you some volunteers. So we're looking forward to that.
Okay.
All right, let's talk a little bit more. Now, we've talked about guys and them getting involved. Why should a mother or guardians or caregivers even, why should they want to be involved with the Men's to Boys program?
Well, if it's a single mother, it would be nice to have a man perspective, so their son can see a positive male role model. But if it's even a father and mother in the house, because there are situations where mother and father's at home, they have great income, but their children's reality or their perception on life is just not what it should be. So mother and father can give you so much. But then if your son is running into some stuff that they're not familiar with, then maybe some of the men in our mentoring program can, check them on that and let them know, because they might have had the same situation with their son that you may not have with your son. And then as a group, we can come together to try to nip any negative stuff that's going on.
Okay. So is there some type of training that men have to go through in order to work with you?
Yes, because when we started out, we just was kind of fly-by-night thing, but as we progressed, it got to more of a positive thing, and the thing that really turns it around was we go through a men's rites of passage, and it's conducted by Dr. Jerry Watson and Dr. Gregory Washington, two college professors, and it's a 5-week, it's basically about 15 hours of intensive training on African history, manhood. We watched some films, and once we came out of that, our program just went to another level.
Wow, that's interesting. And so they have a formalized program for men.
For men, yes.
And you actually interview gentlemen that may be interested in working with your boys?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how long is the program for the boys?
For the boys, we do a 6-month period. They move 3 age groups. They move from the young, from the Hoseas to the prophets to the children of God. So they move through every 6 months. They can progress. Based on the information that we give them and how they move through, because we have training they have to go through. And they also have to pass it's not just going through to be going through. You have to show some progression in order to move to the next level.
And this training is for the young boys, is
right?
That right?
That's doing our mentoring program. We have, like I say, on the 4th Friday each month, we have 3.5 hours.
Okay.
And we have one section, like I say, for his life lessons, one on just mentoring, one we do Bible verses and scripture, and then we have basketball. But in order to play the basketball, your fee, or your admission to the basketball court is to come into the mentoring session.
Wow, okay. So you're inspecting what you're expecting.
Yes.
I'm not surprised there. Let's talk a little bit more too about the components and how this program is set up. A certain period of time for the boys, you said, and you meet once per month.
Once a month, 3.5 hours.
Okay, and that's a little bit challenging too for 3.5 hours.
Yes.
So you've got to have it really information packed in order to get them there and keep them there. But I think you said the bonus is they can get a chance to play a little basketball
that's the carrot. That's where we get them there, and we do it it's 3 hours. But one group, when say the 9 to 11-year-old are being mentored in one room, and the 12